Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our session today, Redistricting Process in Arizona, from grid maps to draft maps to the final district boundaries. My name is Matt Lohr. I'm the Deputy Director of the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, and we're really happy to be able to hold this webinar this morning. As everybody is aware, Arizona is drawing new boundaries for the state's 9 congressional and 30 legislative districts. This is the second time this has happened since the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission was formed in 2000. The first commission served in 2010. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the process, the next steps to finalizing the maps, as well as an opportunity to ask your questions to staff regarding this year's redistricting process. Our speakers today are Mark Flahan and Lori Van Haren. Mark is the Senior GIS Project Manager for the Timmons Group and the Project Manager for the AIRC Mapping Consultants team. Mark has been in the GIS field for over 13 years. We also have Lori Van Haren, who is the Deputy Executive Director for the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. And Lori, raise your hand so they can see which one is you. And then we also have Marie Chappelle Camacho, who's the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. So we're very happy to have them. And with that, Lori, I will turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so
much. I'm sorry, one last thing. So the way we're going to do questions is Lori is going to have her presentation, then Mark will have his presentation. And then at the end, we will open it up to questions from everyone. If you could please put your questions in, it can be any time throughout the presentations, into the Q&A. Not the chat, but the Q&A section that you'll see either at the bottom or the top of your screen. Please put your question in the Q&A anytime, and then after both presentations, we will go through each question, and Lori and Mark and possibly Marie will answer the questions at that time. So sorry, Lori, and please continue.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. We are very grateful for this opportunity to present to you all, and we look forward to working with each and every one of you to get the information out to your members and your stakeholders. As Matt said, my name is Lori Van Haren. I'm the Deputy Director of the Independent Redistricting Commission. And we kind of wanted to start out on our first slide about where we've been, what we've been doing. We had in July and August a statewide listening tour. We just completed another tour of the state where we had really localized meetings, public meetings. Each of these meetings consisted of public feedback where the commissioners just sat and listened to any of the citizens who attended the meetings. They were held in person, remotely, and there were also satellite locations. We have a map up on the PowerPoint of all the places that we've already been. And our intention, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, is to have another statewide tour in November, early December. We've been reaching out to a variety of different groups, tribal governments, local city governments, counties, state agencies, nonprofit organizations, minority groups, anybody who has been interested in the process. At each of our meetings, we've had sign language interpreters, we have interpreters in different languages, depending on the region. And we're really trying to get as much public input as possible. I'll start with the process, and I want to acknowledge that I know that many of you are probably experts in this area, so I apologize if this is something that you already know. But there, as with many of our public meetings, there are a lot of people who may not understand the history of the IRC and how it's created. We'll start with the U.S. Constitution. So the Constitution, as you may know, requires that every 10 years a census is conducted, and based on that, the reapportionment happens. And so the federal government determines what seats, how many seats are based on the census data, and then they divide them among states. But the federal government leaves it to the states to actually draw the lines. And Arizona, like many other states before 2000, left it to the state legislature to make those decisions. But because of concerns about partisanship, in 2000, the voters approved an initiative of Prop 106 and decided to create an independent redistricting commission. And it's really a leader in the nation in this model. Prop 106 actually amended the state constitution. So every 10 years on February 28th, the Independent Redistricting Commission convenes. Their first one was in 2001. They had one in 2011, and then 2021 is the most recent one. There are 5 members on the commission, and the Prop 106 is very specific about how those members are allocated. The current commission has an independent serving as the chairperson, Dr. Erica Newberg, and there are 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. The 2 Democrats are Vice Chair Derek Watchman from Apache County, and then there's also Commissioner Shireen Lerner, who is from Maricopa County, and Dr. Newberg is from Maricopa County as well. The 2 Republican commissioners are Douglas York, who is from Maricopa County, and Commissioner David Neal, who's from Pima County. And so these commissioners convened in February and have really been laying out the plan for how they're going to redraw the maps. And I want to go over a little bit of a timeline with you. It's been, as everybody knows, a different kind of year because of COVID. So we had delays in the census data, as everybody else did. And so normally in the previous commissions, the census data would be released and we'd have access to that information in March. And this year we didn't receive that information until August. So this last portion has been a little bit of an accelerated timeline. But as I said, the commission from when it convened to July was essentially laying out the plan for how they wanted to draw the maps and studying all of the constitutional criteria that they needed. In July and August, we had our first listening tour where we went around the state and we spoke to people about their communities of interest. And then in September, after the census data was delivered, the commission adopted the grid maps. And I want to be very clear because I think this has been a point of confusion, and rightly so, for the general public. But the grid maps are only based on population, and they are split up into equal populations. So the commission is not to consider the previous maps, how they were drawn, other than as a reference point. So the grid maps, basically we start fresh, they adopt a grid map based on, they'll pick an arbitrary point and they'll tell our mapping team, and Mark is a representative from our mapping team. They told our mapping team an arbitrary point that they wanted them to start and how they wanted them to direct the equal population districts. And then the mapping team came back, gave them the grid map, and they adopted that in September. We had a series of grid map hearings where we heard feedback just essentially on the current grid maps, understanding that these were initial maps that were always going to change. And now we're in the draft map phase. So on October 4th and 5th, the commissioners started to really look at the maps, and based on all of the data that they've collected thus far, based on, I'll talk about the 6 constitutional criteria and goals, they started to make decisions about the maps, and that's the draft map phase. In this draft map phase, we have another series of meetings starting tomorrow, October 15th, and then October 18th through the 21st, with a goal of adopting a draft map on October 21st. After that, there's a statutorily required period of 30 days, and I'll talk about that in a minute, where the commission intends to have another statewide tour and receive public feedback based on those adopted draft maps. And then once that 30 days public comment period expires, the commission will have another decision week in early December, where they review and make changes based on public comment, and then they adopt the final map, and then the map is submitted to the Secretary of State. So essentially I've gone over several of the phases, or the 4 phases already, but the biggest part and the most important part of this process are the 6 criteria that the commissioners must consider, the goals that the commissioners must have when drawing the maps. There are 9 congressional districts and 30 legislative districts, so they have to keep it to those numbers. And the grid maps, again, were of equal population. But the 6 goals, 5 of which discuss or add into that a language that says to the extent practicable. But the first one is that the commissioners must comply and the maps must comply with the US Constitution and the Federal Voting Rights Act. And so they've received a lot of information, training, and feedback about how they can make sure that they do that. And that'll be something that they're continuously checking to make sure that they're complying with the Constitution and the Federal Voting Rights Act. They, to the extent practicable, have to be equal populations in the map. And then they have to be geographically compact and contiguous. And I think this is probably something that makes sense, especially for this audience, that, you know, the goal is not to have a portion of a district that is in northern Arizona that isn't touching any other portion of a district, and have part of it be in southern Arizona as well. To the extent practicable, they have to be in the same area. And then they also have to respect communities of interest. And again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but in the July and August sessions, we heard a lot about communities of interest. And those are really the things that make people feel connected to one another. There are several definitions of communities of interest, if, you know, similar areas, similar languages, similar activities, and things that people wanted to either share that they wanted to remain in the same district based on their community of interest, or they wanted it changed based on their community of interest. And there is still, we want to be very clear, it's not too late to let the commission know about what your community interest is, or what your membership community of interest is, that we will take public feedback on all the way up until they adopt the final map. But we did have on the listening tour a way for people to submit their communities of interest, and we received online 910 submissions. And so Mark's going to go through our redistricting hub so that you can actually see what was submitted by many members of the state, and then also public comments and narratives about people's communities of interest. We received thousands of comments, either public comments or the testimony we received in person during the hearings about what people consider their community of interest. Again, another criteria is to the extent practicable, the commission is required to use visible geographic features, cities, towns, county boundaries, and undivided census tracts. And so again, they'll be using metrics to determine that, and our mapping team will be consistently advising on whether or not they're complying with that requirement. And then competitive districts should be favored that would create no significant detriment to the other goals. And so that's it's a part of the criteria, and they are using metrics related to that, and Mark can really get into that if there's interest about the metrics they determined and how they selected them. So what we're looking at doing is, once they adopt the draft maps, there's, as I stated before, there's a statutorily required 30-day public comment period, and public comment can come in many forms. So we have on our website at irc.az.gov ways for people to submit public comments. We will have a variety of in-person meetings. We will also have 2 telephone town halls where members of the public can call in and speak directly to the commissioners over a period of time and give them feedback on the adopted draft maps. In the state legislature can also make recommendations on the maps. And then after the 30-day public comment period, as I said before, the commission will come back in December. There will be a decision week or period where they adopt the final map, and then that will be certified and sent to the Secretary of State. One of the things that we really need from you is we haven't determined the exact dates yet. Tomorrow is one of the decision meetings. So that's October 15th. And the commission is hoping to, during the decision meeting, hoping to discuss potential locations for those in-person meetings around the state. So if you or your members or any of your stakeholders have a very strong feeling about the next location that you want the commission to come to, please let Marie know, and Matt has our contact information. I think we have it at the end of this, or submit it to the IRC admin at azdoa.gov. But we really need that as soon as possible. We're looking to get a list of locations out, like I said, by tomorrow. And we're hoping to have at least 14 meetings around the state, and especially in areas that we haven't visited before. And like I said, we have a map of all of the places that we visited on our website. Each of these meetings have been live streamed and will continue to be live streamed, and they're on our YouTube page, which is again accessible from our website. And so the meetings will be recorded and placed on our website too. One of the things about the location that we've run into, and I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware, and if you're submitting suggestions for locations or venues, we have had several locations that are still closed due to COVID. And so as much as we want to visit all of these areas, there are several places that are either severely limiting attendance in public areas, or are actually closed. So if you have a location suggestion, I would just ask that you double check and make sure that there are no COVID restrictions, or whatever the COVID restrictions are, because we want to be very respectful and cautious for the general public when they're coming in person. That is all I had for this, and I wanted to turn it over to Mark to take you through our redistricting hub.
Thanks, Lori. And to your comment on locations, many of these folks are cities and towns, so you might be getting suggestions that, because they obviously have space and know their restrictions. So I just wanted to mention that. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, Mark, it's all you.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Lori. Good morning, everyone. So as Lori said, I'm from the mapping team, so I'm going to show you some of the products that we have out there on the web, where we're at, and then we will give you a quick tutorial of the redistricting system, because it is open to the public and to all cities and towns, or anyone that to create an account and submit your map, draw maps, look at the data that we have, etc. If I put a URL in the chat, can everyone see it? Do we know?
No, the chat they cannot all see.
Gotcha. I'll send you the URLs, and maybe you can send them out.
Yeah, we can send them out to all those who will be on the session. We'll send them the email.
Cool. Can you see the screen?
We can.
Okay, so this is what we're calling the IRC's mapping hub. It's built on Esri technology, and it's everything in one central spot that has to do with mapping. So we can see here, it's divided up into 5 different sections: our maps and apps, the grid map, which Lori mentioned, the redistricting system, draft maps where we're currently at in the process, and then the final maps. So the homepage looks like this. There's many different ways to get to things. And so we'll slowly walk through it. So the first page here is the maps and apps, a bunch of different applications and data points that we have collected throughout the process. The first one is the listening tour. That was the very first tour that the commission went out to solicit public feedback on communities of interest. That tour was July and August. And out of that, we actually received 910 submissions that came back. And you can see it here as it loads. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see the entire state of Arizona. And in the middle, here is all the data that's tied to all those different polygons. So if we pick one that says Prescott Quad Cities, you can see here's the exact community of interest that the person submitted. Here's their text talking about that the area is intersected by Highway 89, 89A, and 69 in the different cities. And also on the map, you can see this purple polygon. So that is the community of interest that Cindy is calling Prescott-Quad Cities. And like I said, there's 910 of them that you can come in here and click around. So what we noticed here is that if I go back to the homepage, how do we deal with all this data? How do we turn it into manageable chunks? So what we did here then is, if I go back to this maps and apps page and go to the next one down, is we built a community of interest report taking into account all of those 910 different polygons, and looking at areas where there are more than one overlap. So where multiple people said, this is my community of interest. And like I said, here's that map with all the different polygons. What we did here is we grouped them by the number of overlaps for each area. And this is one example that is out of the Tucson area and the Catalina foothills. You can see the darker red in the middle is the area of higher overlap, so more submissions on this area. And then it starts to get less red as you go out to 5 different levels. So highest, high, medium, medium, low, and lowest. And once we sorted all that data out, we got 182 groups from that 910 submissions. If we keep scrolling down on the page, you can actually start to explore the data in a bunch of different ways. So if you're just interested in the highest data set, we can click on the highest button here, and it shows you the areas that had the most overlap, so the most submissions in that area. And that one is called Southeast Arizona. You can see here, if I clicked on this one, that's the Catalina foothills one that we just talked about. And then you can continue to turn these on. So if you also want to see where the high areas are, you can do that. And if you're more interested in what do people consider their low community of interest, here it is. The lowest could have only one overlap, so only one survey was turned in that area, but it's still displayed here. If we scroll down on the page, we broke the data down in a little different way. So the bigger the dots mean the more community of interest out of that 182 that we defined are located in that area. So if I click on the map and start to zoom in, and say I start to zoom in on the Phoenix area, you can see these circles are starting to change shape. And finally, when you get to just a single one, you can see that it's actually titled. So this one that says Salt River Reservation, I can click on it. I can open up the PDF attachment, and here is the community of interest for Salt River Reservation. And you can see over here in the overlap counts, that is showing right now as the lowest. If I go back into here and I want to just see, well, what's in this big circle over here by South Mountain? It says, well, there's actually 2 features in there. And either I can continue to zoom in on the map, or I can click the browse features and it will say, okay, one there is called Greater Phoenix, and the other one here is called Ahwatukee. And again, you can click on the PDF and you can get the community of interest. If we zoom in more and we click on the Kyrene School District here, and we open up the PDF, we can see that there's a lot more overlap counts that people put in for the community of the Kyrene School District. So you can see how that starts to show as what we call a splatter on the map. If you continue to go down, and if you want to just explore community of interest by name, you can. You can interact with this filter in the bottom right-hand side. So just turn that overlap count on with the green line, and you can come in here and see an exact list of all the 182 different community of interest if you want to select it by name. So if I want to come on here and select Eloy, I can click on that. It zooms me into the Eloy Casa Grande area, and I can click on that and I can get to that PDF. So there's multiple different ways to be able to sort the data. If I keep scrolling down, you can see if you want to download all the PDFs for all 182 communities, you can click this button and it will download you an entire map book so you can sit there and print them out if you would like the paper copies of them. It is a little big because it's 182 pages, and so it'll take a second to load, but once it loads, I can show it to you. So here it is, all 182 pages as a map book. So feel free to print it out, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. If you're interested, we have one, just the community of interest of Arizona, because people did circle the entire state. So that one is here too. Next, if I keep scrolling down the page, we also received another 243 paper forms. The paper forms were not included in the 910 that we looked at digitally, but if you want the spreadsheet of all the paper-based surveys, you can click on this button and it will download an Excel document and you can read the raw data from the paper. The other part is third-party data representable. We did grab that middle to end of August, and it's another spot where people were putting information in for communities of interest. So we do have that here. And this app works the same way as the app above. You can click on it and you can get to a PDF. Next after that, we have a social economic app that just talks about demographics for the entire state of Arizona. If you watch IRC, and they had one of the experts on, the state demographer, he mentioned Atlas of Census 2020 redistricting data. This is not an application that the mapping team nor IRC built, but we did show it on the screen, so we did tag it here if you want to look at it. And it has a bunch of different demographics and population data from the 2020 census data. So feel free to grab that here. The next thing that happened is once the census data was released, we developed a grid map. And on September 14th, the commission adopted their first grid map. Here, if you click on the grid map tab, it'll show you an entire page and it'll explain exactly how we built it. Right now, according to 2020 census, the state's population is 7,151,502. So that means that we're going to divide the congressional districts into majority of 794,611. But because we can't divide people in half, we're going to have 3 congressional districts that have 794,612. So let's talk about how was the grid map actually created. So the commission selected to use the township median of the state as the starting point, and that is in Phoenix. That is at 19th Avenue, Grand and McDowell, that intersection. And then we divided the state into 4 quadrants, as you can see here in this graphic on the right. And the commission instructed us to develop the grid map in a clockwise manner and taking into account county boundaries. So once we went into a county, to not leave it until we finished off that county. So out of that process, this is what the grid maps look like. You can see here are the congressional grid maps and then a zoom in of the Maricopa County area. You can see here the congressional districts with the counties put on it, so you can see exactly how all the counties flow within the grid map. The population balance of the grid map. Down here is the competitive measures. So you can see not only the total population from the census and the breakdown of all the new districts, but also the citizen voting age populations for what those grid map districts are and competitiveness. I will dive a little deeper into this in a second when I bring it up full screen. So just hang tight there. And the same thing for grid map legislative districts. You can see here is the exact same thing, but with the legislative districts broken down by county. And again, here is the population of those legislative districts. The competitive metrics and all the demographics are exactly the same, just broken down into the 30 legislative districts that the state has. And then you have this explore the grid maps as an interactive map. So if I wanted to zoom in and say, I want to go look at the Kingman area, I can either use the plus and minus buttons, or I can hold shift and drag a box around the area that I'm interested in. And what you'll notice is on the right is the congressional map, and on the left is the congressional map and the right is the legislative map, that they stay in sync. So as I move one, the other draws. So you can see the exact congressional or legislative district that you would be in. You can also come up here to the little search and you can type in any type of address that you want. I guess I got to put Phoenix in there. There's Phoenix. It's actually IRC headquarters. So now you can see here's that address. If I click on the map, I can see, okay, that address is in Congressional District 3. And if I want to click on the other map, we can see that address is in Legislative District 8. So that's a way that you can start to interact with those maps. If I scroll down for the download the grid maps, here's all the data that you want. Up here is the shape files. So if you have GIS people on staff, they can download the shape files and build as many maps as you'd like, look at data with it. That files are here. If you want to look at the PDFs, go ahead and you can just click it. That one's going to take a little bit because that's a giant poster, and that's for the entire state. But if you want to look at it per district, you can go here, Congressional District 1, and this should be a single PDF of District 1. And here is what the grid map District 1 looks like. If I go back to what that poster looks like, it is 500 megs because it's pretty high resolution, so it's still loading. And then the same thing with the legislative districts. We have the same thing, posters, individual ones for each 30 districts. And then the difference here is that we have a inset. So in Arizona, the Pima County and Maricopa County urban areas are a little tight to see at a statewide level. So we have a spot where you can basically print a 3x5 poster if you want and zoom in and zoom out to the areas that you want to see in those metropolitan areas. And here is the giant poster of the state that finally downloaded. This is an e-size print if you wanted to go plot it in your office. So let's take a look at the metrics. We're just going to take a look at the congressional metrics, but it's only 9 districts. So over here in this category field, this is the number of districts. So 1 through 9 are the congressional districts for the state, the total population that are within that district, and then the deviation from ideal. So remember, I told you 3 districts had to have 1 more person because we can't divide a person in thirds. And then here is the breakdown of the demographics. So total population is everybody that's in that area. Citizen voting age population is different. So you can see total CVAP for District 1 is only 594,328. And then the percentage breakdown of ethnicity for the citizen voting age population in that district. The last piece that you're going to see over here is competitiveness. What we did is we took 9 elections that the commission voted on to look at competitive metrics, and they are 2020 president and Senate races, 2018 Senate, Secretary of State, Attorney General, State Treasurer, Superintendent of Public Education, and State Mine Inspector, and then the 2016 president race. Those are the races that the commission is looking for competitive metrics. And the way that we calculate it is the vote spread is the difference between the average of the Republican votes in those 9 elections and the average of Democratic votes in those 9 elections. So if District 1 had an average vote count of 49% for the Democrats and 52% for the Republicans, that vote spread here would say 3% because there's a 3% difference between 49 and 52. And what the commission is considering is that if it's 4% or less, they're considering it a highly competitive district. If it is between 4 and 7%, they are calling it a competitive district. The Dem wins and the Republican wins is basically taking these 9 historical elections, looking at the elections results and saying, this new District 1, if we were to have that district with that historical election results, what would it look like? And in this time, out of those 9 elections, the Democrat would have won that district 8 of the 9, and Republicans would have won it 1 of the 9. That's how the competitive metrics are. The very bottom row here, just to let you know, that is the statewide numbers. So that means that out of these 9 elections, Democrats have won 5 of them statewide, and Republicans have won 4 of them statewide, and the vote spread statewide was 0.09 of 1%. So just want to throw that out there, because some people add up these columns and say that's how we got 5-4. That's not, it just is a coincidence that they do add up like that. The next pieces that we have is our redistricting system. So right now we have it open up to the public. Anybody can create an account, available 24/7, 365. We have our update section here. You click this big graphic here, it'll take you to the redistricting system, and we will get to that shortly. But we also have a bunch of training resources here. So there is a bunch of videos. And if you come and click here, it'll take you to a YouTube playlist. And here are all the different videos that we have created to for you to learn how to use the software as training. Also, we have the public training session where we went over this in about an hour YouTube video. So there's a bunch of different information available for you on training. There's also training slides. So if you're more interested in reading slides than watching a video, that is here too. So there's a lot of information at your disposal. Before we jump into the redistricting system, the other thing this allows you to do is citizens can submit maps and plans. So right now, as of today, we have 78 different maps that have been submitted. And what you can do here is you can click on this Explore Published Plans, and we can do multiple things here. If you just want to read them, here is a dashboard here. You can scroll through and read what each plan looks like. If you find one that you like, you can hit Open Plan, and it will open the plan in a new tab. So this is a focus district where they just submitted us one district. You can also come here and interact with this wheel. So if you just want to see congressional, you can click on that and it sorts it for the 34 different maps. If you want to see all of the data on a map, open up that this published map viewer. And what you can see is here is all the different submitted plans. So you find, if you want to look at one, you say, okay, I want to look at LD0019. I'm going to add that to the map. And this is what their map looks like. And the one thing you'll notice here is that if I start to add multiple legislative district maps, though the district boundaries change, the coloring is exactly the same and uniform throughout all of the submissions. So you can start to track the different districts by color. If you want to search for a certain plan, it's up here. Feel free to type it in. The thing we just added today is if you want to start viewing the draft map versions that the commission is approving or having us draw, they are here in the Add Draft Maps version. You can go add whichever version you would like. So right now they have approved the 1.x series, which would be Congressional District Test Map 1.1 and Legislative Test Map 1.0, but they did instruct us to draw more maps and they are out here. So all you have to do is hit the add button and it adds that to the map. If you want to print it, you can hit the print button and it will make a PDF of that. If you want to know more about the draft maps, there is a whole page here called Draft Maps, and it talks about the draft maps. It talks about the audit log and the audit log that we're tracking for every step that we do on the map. It shows if you go into the redistricting system, how you can interact with the draft maps. And then here is all the PDFs and the data for each draft map version that we've drawn. And you can see here where it says version accepted in the 1X series, these are the two that the commission approved. So once the commission approves a series, so you can see this is 1.1 and 1.0, we then will move to the next series number, which is 2.0, which is currently where we're at. And here is all of the data that belongs to all of those different draft map versions. And you can see draft map series 3, 4, 5, etc. will all come on this page. So it's a centralized spot for you to be able to grab that. Final maps is coming soon, but once we get there, this page will be filled out and you can do the exact same thing. So redistricting system. So this is what the homepage of the redistricting system looks like. You can create an account here. If you already have an account, click sign into the redistricting system. Sign in and you're going to be presented with a template. You can either choose to build off the approved grid maps. You can choose a focus template, which is one district, or you can choose the 2 test map or draft map versions that they have approved. So in this example, we'll just grab the grid map congressional template. I was doing something right in the system before I joined this, so I had a previous one loaded. And you can see this is the draft map right here. And you can start to interact with it. Not only can you zoom in, and you can see as I zoom in, it goes from county to track to block groups to blocks. I can come over here and go create. I can turn on different demographic points. So here in the key elections, it is all of the 9 different elections that the commission chose for competitiveness. You can turn on either the sum or the percentage, whichever you'd like. You can see that data here live draws in the system. I can come over here and turn on Arizona standard demographics if I want to see overall population, see the total Hispanic population, white population, Black, Asian American, Native American, etc. And we can see that all those numbers start to grow and that they are live in the system for all these new districts. So if you wanted to work off the grid map and say, hey, I'd like to make a change to the congressional grid map, all you have to do is go save as, call it Mark, I'll just call it demo for this. Click OK. I have now saved the plan, so it's mine. So now I can start to do anything that I want. So we've been talking a lot about Phoenix and Tucson. Let's go out here to say the Sholo area, be a little different, and say, I want Sholo to be in a different district. All I have to do is come up here to the district window, select which district I would like Sholo to go into. Say we want to make it District 3. And I know this would not make sense in a districting situation because there's no District 3 around there. But just for the example, either I can click on the individual tracks and we can see live in the system, it took 274 people out of District 2 and put them in District 3. And you can see all the numbers have changed. If you want to do more of a square, you can click the square tool and you can just draw a square to grab everything that you want. If you want more of a freehand drawing tool, you can do that too. And then once you've got your map totally done the way that you want, you can come over here and hit submit, and it will submit your plan. It'll ask you for more information, and then it will be posted on that hub site within a day or 2 business days. The other thing your plan has to do is it has to pass these integrity checks. So it has to make sure that it has all the population, it has the correct number of districts. And you can see I passed everything. So maximum deviation, overall range, I'm not missing any blocks, but it says, well, you can't pass because District 3 can't be non-connected from the other District 3. And you can click on that and you can start to see, okay, which part is it? it'll say here's District 2, and then it'll say, well, here's a little part that is not touching District 2 because it's surrounded by District 3. So this would not pass. You want to undo your edits, go back to the Create tab and just hit the Undo button, and it will start to undo everything. Oops. If you want to look at all the submitted plans in the redistricting system, you can do that too. You come back to the file, hit the open button. I don't want to save it. And you can go over here to the RXO submitted plans group. And here is all the submitted plans for the public that are out there, anything that has been submitted. So all you have to do is just pick one of these maps, and we're just going to pick we'll just pick this one. I have nothing about it, but we'll use this as an example. And if I want to start working off this, all I have to do is hit Save As, and I can start working off this map as my starting point to create another one. I can also come over here and turn on the different demographic points for it if I am interested in that. With that being said, I think that is the quick tutorial of what we have for mapping and the redistricting system. So I will turn it back over to you guys for questioning, unless Lori, you have some additional things you want me to go over.
I think that covered everything. Thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you, Mark. You can stop your share screen. So thank you both Lori and Mark. And again, if you have any questions, please put those questions in the Q&A. You'll see that at the bottom or the top of your screen, and we can take any of those questions at this time. We did get a question via email that came before the session, so I just want to ask that to you, and it would be either Lori or Mark. You can answer this, or Marie. And some of these you might have already answered in your presentation, but I just want to make sure that the question is asked. The first question is, since the maps are already being prepared, is it too late to provide feedback on communities of interest? If not, when is that deadline?
It is not too late to provide feedback on communities of interest, and really any of the public feedback that people want to submit will be considered by the commission until the final maps are adopted. They have been looking at every single thing that everybody has submitted, so it's not too late. There was the communities of interest report that has already been completed, so it won't be included in that one report, but it doesn't mean that it's too late to submit your community of interest.
Okay, the next question is, what is the best way to communicate a city or town's feedback? Does a formal resolution carry more weight than a signed letter?
And my answer to this is really, well, twofold. One is the best way to give feedback is to go in and submit a map. And to the extent that you have questions about it, I think I'd refer you first to Marie, and she can make sure that she gets you to either the mapping team or to somebody else who can help you. But submitting maps in the redistricting system give us the exact data that we need. There's no interpretation necessary. It will tell us exactly what you want from the IRC. So that's the best way to gather data. But the second part, I think, of that question was whether a formal resolution or a signed letter carry more weight. I can't speak directly for the commission, but I can tell you they have communicated over and over and over again that they consider everything and anything. So I don't know that one carries more weight than the other, but to the extent that communities of interest agree with one another, and that's helpful for the commission to know.
Thank you. The third question we have, if a city or town is approached by, and you might have just answered this, if a city or town is approached by other groups, for example, tribal nations, other municipalities, etc., asking for joint action to provide input to the IRC, is it favorable to send a joint response, individual requests, or both?
I'll leave that to the requester to decide. But again, to the extent that communities of interest agree with one another on certain areas, it's very favorable to the commission to know and understand that information.
Thanks. Next question is, has Yavapai County provided any community of interest request as of yet?
I will ask Mark that.
I know we have requests in the Yavapai County area. I don't know if Yavapai County has officially sent us something for community of interest. At least that was taken into account. But I don't have all the 910 submissions memorized off the top of my head. So they very well could have, and it could be in our analysis. I will try to look for that real quick.
Yeah, the next question, Mark, is, or has any groups within Yavapai County provided input? And could they then search it through the mapping system that you just went over?
Yes, go to that community of interest report and zoom into the Yavapai County area. There's definitely input that has been put in the county.
All right, the next question is it unlikely that a community of interest would be kept intact if it spans a county border?
I think that's up to the commissioners to decide. I mean, Lori, unless you have a better answer than that.
No, I think that's a perfect answer.
Yep.
It just depends.
All right, well, I think that's it for questions. Again, if anybody has any questions, please go to the Q&A. But if that's it for questions, then we'll go once, twice, 3 times. What I'll do is, first, I just want to thank Lori and Mark for speaking today, and Marie for helping me set this up. And what we'll do is we'll send the information where you are recording this. I'll send a link of the recording out, and then any information, we'll put the PowerPoint in. We'll put the PowerPoint in there and contact information to Marie and to the IRC so that you can continue to ask questions if you do have questions to the IRC as they are proceeding in this process. We just received a question, contact info, please, and website again, thanks. So Brenda, we will be sending that information to all attendees. That way you'll have the ability to contact either the IRC to look at the maps, etc. So we'll be sending that probably later today or early tomorrow to everyone. So with that, is there anything else, Mark or Lori, that you have for the group before we end for the day?
I just want to, again, encourage everyone to let their members know to submit maps via the redistricting site and let us know if there's any way that we can help you. And then also let us know if there's a location that you want us to attend on our next listening tour. Thank you.
And one more thing for me, I encourage you to push this information out through your social media channels, get your citizens involved. Obviously, a lot of people have been involved, but you know, we welcome input from individuals also. Thank you.
Yeah, and that was one of the questions that just came up is, can we share the link? And certainly share it with your communities and share it with those who are interested, so this information gets out, obviously to all the cities and towns, but for your residents in the cities and towns also. Okay, with that, I would just like to thank Lori, Mark, and Marie again from the Redistricting Commission. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time today. We hope you will continue to be involved in this process as it moves forward, and thank you for attending. Goodbye, everybody.